It's pretty clear that the Eastern Conference is the best that it's been in years. It was always very predictable what would happen, and the seeding wouldn't really matter that much because LeBron's team would always win it all. But now with the moves that have been made in the offseason, the East looks like it's going to be the most competitive that it's been in a while. While it may not be too surprising who's at the top, the playoff race in this conference is going to be very fun and very chaotic, and I'm here for it. What's going on, guys? It's Mus here, and in this video I'm going to go through all of the Eastern Conference teams and rank them based on where they are going into the season. I will put these teams into 4 tiers: non-playoff teams, play-in teams, playoff teams, and title contenders. This was very hard to do, and I did my best, so I ask you guys not to go after me too hard. This is just my opinion. Before we start, I want to ask you guys to please subscribe to the channel and also drop a like on this video if you do enjoy. It makes a big difference in helping this channel grow. With all of that being said, let's talk about the state of the Eastern Conference for the 2021-2022 season. The Magic cleaned house by trading Aaron Gordon and Nikola Vucevic at the deadline, and now they're in a full rebuild. The Magic are going to be one of the worst teams this upcoming season, but it will still be interesting to see what they do with the young pieces that they have. Jonathan Isaac will hopefully be coming back from his injury, and they drafted Jalen Suggs with the 5th pick, and he has shown to be a guy with a lot of star potential. So you have Isaac, you have Suggs, you also have Wendell Carter, Cole Anthony, and Markelle Fultz. I mean, this team is young, and they're not going to do much next year, but we'll see how this rebuild goes and how these young guys develop. The Cavaliers are in an interesting spot because they're not a playoff team at all, but they have guys that can make this team very fun to watch, and they do have a decent core. Colin Sexton and Darius Garland are a great duo that showed a lot of promise last season, so it will be interesting to see how they take that next leap. They also have a guy like Isaac Okoro, who was just, another promising guy that they have who should improve next year. They also extended Jarrett Allen to $100 million, and he has shown to be a great shot blocker. Oh yeah, and they also drafted Evan Mobley, who is a very talented prospect, and he's going to have a big role on this team. So while the Cavs are going to be at the bottom of the East, they're going to have a core to build with, and the team will be fun to watch, to be honest. If you have League Pass, I would tune into Cavs games this season. The Detroit Pistons are entering a new era with the #1 pick Cade Cunningham at the helm. He's already shown out during the Summer League, and there's obviously a ton of excitement around him. I mean, he's special. The thing is, the Pistons don't really have too much on this roster to be excited about, other than Cade, mainly because of just how young this team is. But I don't want to act like they have a bunch of bums around Cade, because they do have some good pieces. Jeremy Grant last year was almost an all-star, and he's relatively young, so I expect him to be right there too in terms of being an all-star. They also have Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, and Killian Hayes, who are all nice pieces. This team is going to be bad next season, but I still do hope that the Pistons do get a couple of national games, because Cade is must-watch TV. But yeah, it's still gonna be a while before the Pistons are good again. But they have Cade, so there's something to be excited about. Losing your best player in franchise history doesn't really help your team that much. I wasn't sure if I wanted to put the Raptors here, but I decided to because there are too many other teams that are just better than them at this point, and because of that, it puts the Raptors towards the bottom, even though I don't think they're a bad team. I'm curious to see how Pascal Siakam handles the pressure of being the face of this team, because he's shown how good it can be, but then he's also shown how bad he can be. They still have Fred VanVleet and for now Goran Dragic, so that's a backcourt that you can work with. And now you have guys on the wings like OG Anunoby, who I think is going to take another big leap this year. And then they drafted Scotty Barnes, who has shown a lot of promise so far in the Summer League. I want to think that this team can be in the play-in tournament, but the East is just so much better now, and it's just going to be very hard for them to do it. It's going to be very interesting to see how this team moves forward without Kyle Lowry, but again, they're not going to be bad. At least I think so. We saw how much the Wizards struggled last year with Westbrook and Beal, despite the incredible numbers the both of them were putting up. I know they were hit with COVID in the beginning, but they still ended up being a play-in team. But now with Westbrook gone and Spencer Dinwiddie coming in after his injury, I just don't know if this duo is going to be just as good. The team itself isn't too bad. They have Gafford, Hachimura, Denny Avdija is going to come back from his injury, and Davis Bertans. And now, because of the Westbrook trade, they have Kyle Kuzma and KCP. I don't think this team's going to be, hot garbage, but unless someone else steps up, Beal is just going to be carrying this team again, and the furthest I think they go is the play-in tournament. The Charlotte Hornets are going to be a must-watch team again because, man, they're so fun, and it's going to be the same thing again this season. I'm pumped to watch LaMelo Ball take another leap in the second year of his career. They also have Gordon Hayward coming back from injury. They extended Terry Rozier, and he's solid. And despite losing Devontae Graham, the additions they have made are very interesting. They added Kelly Oubre and Mason Plumlee, and they also drafted James Bouknight, Kai Jones, and JT Thor. But as much as I like the moves that they have made, like last year, I expect them to be a play-in team, and maybe from there they can get their way into a playoff spot. It'll be tough, but it wouldn't surprise me. Regardless of where they end up, the Hornets are going to be my league pass team for sure, and it should be everyone's. The Pacers roster doesn't have a lot of big names other than their new coach Rick Carlisle, but they have a solid squad. Sabonis is a multiple-time All-Star who has continued to put up good numbers, and he's continued to be solid. Malcolm Brogdon is a great facilitator and scorer, and they have Karis LeVert, who was pretty good last year despite being treated for a form of cancer. This is a good group, and then you also add Miles Turner, who is a terrific interior defender coming back from his injuries, so this team will be decent. I just don't have a lot of hope with the other guys on the roster, and I'm also not sure how these players are going to respond to Rick Carlisle, especially after the mess that they had with their last coach. Despite all of that, I like their core enough to put them in the play-in spot like last year, but whether something else happens after that, I'm not so sure. The Knicks made some interesting moves to help improve their already solid roster, on top of extending Julius Randle and Derrick Rose. If Kemba Walker stays healthy, he is going to be a great fit for what the Knicks need, which is a half-court playmaker and shot creator. I also like them getting Evan Fournier for spacing, and if that defense continues to be elite like last year, and they have an improved offense, the Knicks are going to be a top 5 team in the East again. I love what the Knicks have done, and they have set themselves up to be a solid playoff team for years to come. The Boston Celtics are in an interesting spot because they have two superstars in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, but they're not the contenders the way that they would be expected to be. They didn't really do much this offseason either because they want to make a big swing in 2022 for another star, but for this season, I don't know why people are so low on them. Like, I don't think they're gonna be a bottom tier playoff team like people expect. They got Dennis Schroeder for only $5.9 million, which, you know, despite all of the antics that he's dealt with, getting him for that much is a steal. And they have Marcus Smart, who they just extended, and hopefully Peyton Pritchard will take a leap in his second year. Tatum and Brown are superstars, like I said, but a lot of this season is going to depend on the rest of the squad stepping up. With Jaylen Brown coming back from injury and COVID hopefully not being too much of a factor, it puts the Celtics in a better spot than they were last year in my opinion. The Bulls were very aggressive and changed the direction of not just their team, but their franchise as a whole. Before free agency, I had this team in the play-in range, but adding a true point guard in Lonzo Ball, in the backcourt with Zach LaVine, and a mid-range killer and playmaker in DeMar DeRozan, and a terrific defensive guard off the bench with Alex Caruso, this team looks so much better on paper. Of course, their defense is a big question mark, especially with Vucevic as their center, but this team is going to be really good offensively, and they're going to win a lot of games. This team has the potential to be a top 5 team in the East, and I just think they're too good to be just a play-in team. Making the playoffs are the expectations, and that's where I think they'll end up. It's tough to figure out what this team is going to be, especially since we don't know what's going to happen with Ben Simmons. But for this, let's just assume he doesn't go anywhere. The Sixers are going to be a top team in the East again. They just extended Joel Embiid, who was the MVP runner-up. Simmons, despite his flaws, is still a good player. And they also have Tobias Harris, who was a solid wing guy and was almost an all-star last year. They also re-signed Danny Green. They also signed Andre Drummond, which that one I'm a little iffy about, but still, it's still a good center. They also have Matisse Thybulle and Tyrese Maxey, who are two very young guys, and I hope that they take another leap like they did. As good as this team is, it's pretty clear from what we've seen that they're not going to be a championship team, and the second round is basically their ceiling, and I just don't see that being any different next season, with or without Ben Simmons. The Atlanta Hawks were the biggest surprise last year, making the conference finals, and I have no reason to believe that they won't be a potential top 5 team in the East again. They really didn't make any changes to the roster, but they did lock up Trae Young and John Collins for the long term. And now with Nate McMillan being their head coach all year long, this team is more experienced, and these young guys are going to hopefully take another leap. There's not much else to say about this team. They're not a title contender, but they're a team, like we saw, that'll give anyone a hard time in the playoffs. I am very excited to see how this team develops next season because they're going to be very fun to watch. The Miami Heat are such an interesting team because they made big moves in the offseason that clearly make them better, but it's still unsure if this team is a contender or not. I love them getting Kyle Lowry, but I also really love them getting PJ Tucker, especially because of what we saw from him in the finals. As much as I love this team and I think they're going to be a good team to watch, I'm just unsure about whether they're on the same tier as Milwaukee and Brooklyn. As great as their starting five can be, they don't really have a lot of depth outside of that, and that's a big problem for me. And that's also not to mention that outside of Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero, this team isn't that young. And I think that's going to matter in an 82-game season competing with the powerhouses of Brooklyn and Milwaukee. Yes, the Heat are definitely going to be a tough team, but I'm still unsure about whether this makes them a title contender. The Bucks are going to try to go back-to-back, and they have a pretty good chance. They're bringing back most of their team, but they did lose PJ Tucker, which does suck, because he was a solid defender and a good three-point shooter for them in the playoffs and in the finals. The biggest moves they made was re-signing George Hill and also adding Grayson Allen and Rodney Hood. Those are decent depth pieces that can help this Bucks team, so it'll be interesting to see how they work. Giannis and the Bucks know that winning the title this year is going to put more expectations on them to repeat. Whether that happens or not, we'll see. But I do like their chances of going back to the finals, considering there's only one team, in my opinion, that is in their way. I think it's pretty clear that the Brooklyn Nets are the current favorites to win the East, and they're going to be the biggest challenge to the defending champion Bucks. The expectation is that the Big Three will all be healthy for this season, and they will all have signed their long-term extensions. The biggest thing they did this season was signing Patty Mills, who is a solid point guard who can bring you some really good shooting off the bench. One thing I'm really interested in seeing is how the depth of this team looks outside of the starting five. But again, when you have KD, Kyrie, and Harden fully healthy, it might not matter as much. The Brooklyn Nets are not just the favorites to win the East, they're also the favorites to win the title next year according to the betting market, so it's pretty clear that the East is going to be theirs to lose. And that's going to wrap up this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy, please be sure to leave a like and comment down below what you think about the Eastern Conference. What teams do you think are going to be in what tier? I'm very curious to hear what you guys think. And if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and also turn on your notifications so that you don't miss an upload. Thank you guys as always for your continuous support, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.